Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. This is a very important day, a historic day for our city as we now begin our transition of leadership in the police department. And before I go further, I want to thank again Chief Eric Payne for his leadership. He's unable to be with us today due to vacation, but I did have a chance to talk to him this morning along with command staff. He sends his regards and congratulations to our new chief, Chief Eric Winstrom. It is important for me to begin by talking about how community engaged this process is. The chief of police is one of the most important appointments that I can make as city manager. And in doing so, although I have the charter authority to do it on my own autonomy, I chose to make sure that it was inclusive and it was community engaged and it was robust. From the beginning of the process, we talked to departmental staff, community staff, other stakeholders about the ideal qualities we like to see in our police chief. We engaged a search firm, a very reputable search firm that has done searches across the country in large and mid-sized urban areas, in public sector search and consulting. And the CEO there, Gary Peterson, did an outstanding job of taking the feedback that we've had developed from our community profile and sharing it across the country to other people who were looking and also aggressively recruited people, made them aware of the opportunity that were not looking. We had a very good pool of candidates. I am very pleased with the quality of the candidates that surfaced through the process and brought forth 3 good finalists. I appreciate the interest of all of our finalists and wish them the best in all of their future endeavors. But in that regard, based on the feedback that I received from the multiple interactions from over 50 members of the community that interacted in interview panels and processes to the public forum and the meeting that we had here from departmental staff, as well as my own assessment, I am pleased today to announce the appointment of Eric Winstrom as our next police chief. In appointing him, I wanted to make sure that we appointed a chief that was progressive and looking at his over 20 years of law enforcement and the things that he has done in the Chicago Police Department and the community is indicative of the kind of progressive things that he has done and will bring to our city. I wanted to appoint a chief that was culturally competent. And by my interactions with him, looking at his demonstrated history in the Chicago Police Department, working with community leaders in Chicago throughout his history, he has proven that he will continue to show his cultural competency here in Grand Rapids as we are growing and becoming a more diverse and welcoming community. I wanted to make sure that I appointed a chief that was a principled leader. And what you'll see and what you have heard is that our chief, our incoming chief, Winstrom, has a high ceiling for ethical, behavioral, and moral leadership. He's a very talented chief. We're very fortunate to have him. Not only does he have a fine appreciation for the law enforcement profession as being an officer in patrol and rising through the ranks, but he's also had experience both in the court being an attorney and prosecuting some very important cases for the Chicago Police Department. He's an expert in use of force, in Fourth Amendment. He is a family man, and pleased that both he and his family will be joining us here in West Michigan. I had a chance not only to consider the feedback from all of the various stakeholders, but also to incorporate that in additional conversations that I had with Commander Winstrom, as well as references in the Chicago Police Department. Chicago Police Department and the community. Had a chance to talk to aldermen's, leadership within the police department, community members, and those conversations further affirmed my decision that he is the type of leader that we need in our city and our police department to continue to lead us forward. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions after Commander Winstrom comes and addresses us, but it's my pleasure now to present our next police chief for the city of Grand Rapids, Eric Winstrom.
Thank you, City Manager Washington. I'm honored that you've entrusted me with this incredible opportunity in this incredible city in such an historic time in policing. So when Grand Rapids police officers take their oath of office, they swear to support the Constitution of the United States, and they swear to faithfully perform their duties to the best of their ability. When I take that oath, I will say those words earnestly. I will be a champion of constitutional policing here, and I will faithfully work to the best of my ability to ensure Grand Rapids is a safe place for everyone. My family and I are thrilled to become a part of the Grand Rapids community. My wife, Rachel, my son, Connor, and my daughter, Molly, thanks for being with me, you guys, for this whole thing. As Chief of Police, I'm also excited to partner with the community in this great city. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.
All right, we'll now take any questions that you might have.
Commander Doug Reardon, Fox continues. Congratulations to you.
Thanks, Doug.
What role did your brother's incarceration play in your approach to policing, and what role will it play here in our community?
It really gave me the insight to see. I believe I was 11 years old at the time, and it gave me the insight to see not only the impact that incarceration has on an individual, somebody that obviously I love very much, but also the family. It was me, my brother, my older sister, and my parents, and the impact it had on our entire family. And so to live that reality as a young police officer, that really impacted me. So, everything I did when taking enforcement action, when I looked at someone and I said, is the arrest of this individual really the best thing, not only for this person, but for the community? And to be honest, in our own experience, and I think my family would definitely agree with me, that it wasn't the right thing for my brother. There were other things. So I'm excited. Where I am now, we're working on things like the narcotics diversion program, where we try and divert people where it's appropriate out of the criminal justice process. So it's really impacted me. It's really impacted my whole philosophy on policing.
Prison numbers, jail numbers, is that part of your approach coming in as chief? Is that something that you'd like to see drop here in the city?
Ideally, absolutely. Now, I don't want to say that there's never a reason for someone to be in jail. I've worked into, obviously investigating homicides. I was in charge of our child sex crimes unit in the city of Chicago. There are people that society is better off than being in jail. But ideally, that's just not the case. Across Grand Rapids, across the country, the less people in jail, generally speaking, the better. There is a time and place for enforcement action, and I support that, but it's definitely a concern of mine as well. Thanks, Doug.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline with Wood TV.
Hi, Jacqueline.
Welcome and congratulations. Given your commitment to community policing, do you plan to live within the city of Grand Rapids when you and your family move here?
Absolutely. I do. Thanks, Jacqueline.
County Commissioner Robert S. Womack, want to congratulate you and welcome you to our beautiful city, Grand Rapids. When you were being interviewed, I asked you a question. I said, if I do a ride along with the police to see policing through law enforcement eyes, would you do a walkthrough with me in the community to be introduced to people and give you a chance to see policing through the eyes of people in our community? Is that something you're still willing to do?
Commissioner, thank you very much. And I remember the question very clearly, because the only hesitancy I had is that you wanted me to visit barbershops. I get a little jealous when I go to barbershops. However, absolutely, I would like that. I'm going to embrace, that's tremendous. I would like more of those opportunities, as many as possible.
Okay.
Thank you.
My last question is, what do you see your work as the first 30 days? What does it look like for us?
Well, I plan to be the most exhausted person in the city of Grand Rapids in the first 30 days. I hear there's dozens of communities here. There's dozens of neighborhoods. I think there's something like 24 or more neighborhood associations. I'd love to meet with every single one of them. I'd love to meet with our partners, the county commissioners, obviously the city commissioners. And then I got a lot of work to do internally too. I'm a cop. I've been a cop for a long time. So I know a lot about policing. But I'll be brand new here in Grand Rapids. There's a lot of people that I need to meet internally as well. So I'm going to be busy. I'm going to be tired, but it's going to be wonderful.
Thank you. and welcome to our city.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Womack, who also works for Wood TV, Fox, WZZM, and other media outlets. Thank you for that question. Other questions?
Yeah, I'll take another, Commander. In your CV, you touted your handling of racial injustice protests in Chicago in 2014 and in 2020. And we certainly had our share of that here as well in the last year or two. We've also had a lot of reports showing bias within some of the policies of GRPD. We had one from Lambert a couple years ago, another one very recently that showed some similar issues. What's your approach to racial injustice and sort of mending the community in some of the issues that we've experienced in the last year on that front?
Yeah, wow, racial injustice and mending the community. So you said, policies, bias in policies. So number one, I was a commanding officer of policy in my current assignment in Chicago, and there really are best practices across the country to make sure that those policies are in place. And it goes to recruitment and retention. You want a diverse workforce. No one with a diverse background is going to want to be at a place that tolerates that sort of bias. And again, my approach just in general is I'm going to get out of the community, I'm going to meet everyone, and I want to hear input like this. I haven't read the Lambert report, but I'd be very interested in reading that and hearing about any other experiences like that people have had in Grand Rapids. Thank you for the question, Doug.
I know I'm John Tunison with the MY Grand Rapids Press.
Hey, John.
I wasn't sure what Jacqueline's question was, but about community policing, there's Chief Payne just began a program not too long ago, but my question is, there's critics that say there's not enough officers out there to really accomplish it in a meaningful way. Is there a way to bridge that gap?
Well, in my philosophy, I mentioned this last time I was here, is really, every officer's got to be a community policing officer, so every officer has to make this determination. Are they spending their time in a way that's benefiting the city of Grand Rapids, and is the way they're spending that time embraced by the people of Grand Rapids? So if you do that, whether you're a beat officer responding to calls or a dedicated community service officer, really it's the job of all of us to do community policing. So, and Jacqueline's question was, am I going to live in the city? And the answer is yes.
Is there anything else that you want people at home, the community, to know about you? I know there was a chance to meet you when you were a candidate, but now that you've got the job, what's just one thing you want people at home to know about their next chief?
I guess that I want to meet them. And I know there's a lot of, I've talked to City Manager Washington and some of the police leadership. I know a lot of connections are already made, but I am coming from outside the city, and I'm going to be looking for opportunities to go and speak with people. So the one thing is I want to meet people. I want to hear from them. I want to listen.
So we can expect to see a lot of you then?
Yes.
Questions?
Yeah, I got one more if you
ahead.
don't mind. Sorry.
Last question,
Mayor,
Eric.
last one. Just it's something that you had brought up during the public forum on your support potentially of ShotSpotter and some surveillance technologies. There's obviously an appetite in police departments for using these types of technologies, but I think the public has a lot of questions about how they're used and the line between safety and privacy. In what capacity, especially with this new policy that was just recently passed here in Grand Rapids when it comes to more community involvement in surveillance technology, in what capacity do you plan to use it, and is ShotSpotter still something that you plan to try and get here in the community?
So since I last visited, I've really learned that there has been a robust conversation here about ShotSpotter, and it seems like the community has spoken about ShotSpotter, and most likely it's off the table. But I am focused on evidence-based policing to see what works and what doesn't work. I do love the new administrative policy that was rolled out, which essentially said for surveillance technologies like that in order for the police department to move forward with them, they're going to require community input, which is a fantastic thing written into policy. So, yeah, all positive. Thanks.
Let me also, because I want to answer this now and not 3 or 4 days of follow-up questions and just be upfront about it. So regarding some of the calls to restart this process based on responses from all of the candidates, I was serious with my commitment that I would take all the community feedback seriously from everyone that shared that. And regarding the feedback that I received regarding Commander Winstrom, that was one of the issues regarding ShotSpotter, and I think there were other questions around some of the things that happened in his policing history in Chicago. And I am fully satisfied that there are no reasons to be concerned about his ability to lead here based on the needs of Grand Rapids. As you heard him say about ShotSpotter, he did not fund the budget for ShotSpotter in Chicago. He was not one of the aldermen that elected to do this or the community members that asked it. He did his job. And if our city commission elected to do the same thing, and if we funded the budget for it, then I would expect any person in the police department to carry out that program, policy, or directive. So I want to be clear about that. Secondly, I did have the opportunity to dispel some of the misinformation regarding the performance and the impeccable service record that he has in Chicago. Confirmed by department internal sources, there is absolutely no disciplinary action that has ever been taken against our new chief based on any complaints that have ever been submitted. And so I know that was another cause for pause or concern that was out there. And so again, I took all that feedback into consideration, and we did further vetting and follow-up to address that, and I am fully confident and determined that we have the right chief before us in Eric Winstrom. What station are you representing now? The radio? You're okay. All right. Give us your handle.
Being one of the few commissioners, either from city or county, that live right there in the center of the 07 where things happen. So the violence has even affected my family. I recently lost a cousin who was shot in the head, 20 years old, no suspects yet. My question is to the city manager, the failure when it comes to law enforcement is bigger than the police department. It's the community support, it's the city support. What type of support will he get? Because we have a lot of city police chiefs who felt they didn't get the type of support they needed from the city and from downtown. So what type of support is going to be there with him in the police department to try to bridge this gap with the community and make sure we're all working together to get success on making this the safest city in West?
Thank you, Commissioner, for that question. It is a very good question, because I think if Chief Payne were to be here, or even Chief Rahinsky, those are even the deputy chiefs, that feeling of being on an island sometime has never been greater than since 2020, right? It's been tough on law enforcement across the country. It's been tough here in Grand Rapids, and there has been expressions of the lack of support, felt the lack of support, not just from City Hall, but from the community in general. And in order for there to be community policing, the community is going to have to work with the police department. We're going to have to work with our police chief. And so he has my commitment and certainly my support, and I've talked to all of the commissioners. We have a couple who are here today. He has their support. He has all the support of the men and women in the police department. As you can see, those are here today. He has support of our law enforcement partners. I see the prosecutor here, and I see some community leaders here, the clergy. He has support of the neighborhoods. Now he's going to have to earn support of other people. That is something that he and this department will prove. But I think our will is to trust and be as supportive as we can. And so, and he is going to need the support of our media partners to help to fairly and justly report what's happening in our community. Certainly to keep the community informed, but do it from a very informed way, in a way that doesn't alarm the community when there's misinformation. So he's going to need media support as well. And our communications office, the communications function in the police department will work with the chief on making sure that he's supported in that endeavor.
Thank you, everybody. You guys want to come with us, or?
This is it.